is that there is a different path to peace. There is a different path to peace. And it connects with something that David said. David said, well, there's a top-down approach and there's a bottom-up approach. Netanyahu believes you have to combine both of those, which is why he has argued for a three-track approach to peace. There's two tracks that we would consider bottom-up, which is security and the economy. And there's a third track, political negotiations. Now, what happened in Annapolis was that the government almost exclusively focused on political negotiations. They invested all their energies, almost all their efforts in reaching an elusive agreement. And I agree with Aaron that there is no way now where you have, on the Palestinian side, a willingness to make the sorts of compromises that will be required for a deal on the core issues. But yet, despite that, the previous government just decided to negotiate and negotiate and negotiate and to focus on that. To bang their head against the wall over and over and over again. And there are limited political capital. There's a limited political capital in Israel, just as it is anywhere else. If you're focused on that, well, then you're not focused on changing the reality on the ground. What Netanyahu will do, and you will see it, I think, in a rather dramatic fashion, in the next 2 years particularly, is to work to change the reality on the ground. First through security, which General Dayton is doing. He is recruiting and training Palestinian security forces, and these security forces are not the forces of the past, where Palestinians just decide, they leave their terror gang, and they decide to join the police force to get an extra salary. No, they're carefully screened, they're trained, they're equipped, and they have pride in what they're doing. And the most amazing thing that happened during Gaza operation a couple months ago is what didn't happen on the West Bank. You had protests in European capitals, but you didn't have them in Jenin, in Nablus, and Jericho. You had 1,000 Palestinians killed, and you did not have protests in West Bank cities. Now, what that says to me is maybe the security forces are doing a little bit better, but also that the Palestinians want a different life. They don't want to live under Hamas tyranny. They want a better future. And that gets to the second track, which is the economic track. This is led by Tony Blair, and he's tried as best he can to get economic development moving in the West Bank. Now, I have to tell you, I've been in a few meetings with the Prime Minister and Tony Blair, and I am amazed at how many bureaucratic obstacles there are to Palestinian economic development. It's not all security. You sit down, you get a piece of paper, there's 25 different projects, 10 of them should be solved in 5 minutes. But when you have a government who's focused on making the peace to end all peace, the deal of the century, and you don't have a prime minister who takes a gavel and rolls up his sleeve and works day after day to move the bureaucracy along and to get through all the red tape, nothing will happen on the ground. Whether it's paving a road next to Ramallah, this is a project. You have to pave a road in Ramallah for about 1 mile in order to build 5,000 apartments. We don't even have a problem of a roadblock on the road. There's no road to block. Or a project in Jenin, an industrial zone in Jenin that requires an electric cable, but the electric company in Israel, that is a state unto itself, decides that they don't want to put the cable through to Jenin. Little things. And a prime minister can do a lot to change that dynamic, and this prime minister will do a lot to change that dynamic. And the idea is that through economic development and through security cooperation, you can create a context where political progress is possible. What has happened up to now is to try to basically build a pyramid from the top down. It doesn't work that way. You have to step by step, layer and layer, have the Palestinians have rule of law, have a decent economy, provide jobs, provide hope, and slowly but surely you actually build lots of stakeholders if not right away interested in going for peace, but at least not reverting to all-out war. I am not of the school of thought that says, well, if you just give everybody an extra refrigerator, they're going to give up their identity. It doesn't work that way. But you can moderate the conflict through economic development. It has happened in many places around the world. Cyprus is one of them. Northern Ireland is another one. There are many, many, many examples. So this is what makes it possible. Not only do we have Israelis and Palestinians who want a new approach to peace, we actually have a new approach to peace. And the third reason is that something is happening right now in the Middle East that has not happened in the last 100 years. And that is that the Arab world and Israel share a common enemy. In the hierarchy of threats, the Arab world today recognizes that we are not their problem. As our Prime Minister has said before, if you put all the Arab leaders in a room and you put a lever on the wall, solving the Palestinian problem, dealing with the economy, neutralizing the Iranian threat, add another 10 levers. All of them will pull the lever of Iran. All of them are frightened of Iran. And that provides a historic opportunity. And that is an opportunity that, frankly, Israel cannot do alone. That is an opportunity where U.S. leadership will be critical. To recognize that on the basis of this common danger, that not only can you work together to neutralize that threat, but you might be able to work together also to advance peace. Now, there's a feeling that I've heard and read about that says, in order to get the Arabs on board in dealing with the Iranian threat, Israel should be pressured to do this or that. I'm sorry, I'm just not that intelligent because I don't understand that argument. The Arab world should not receive anything from the U.S. for the U.S. helping them survive. The U.S. should be demanding things from the Arab world to counter that Iranian threat. The whole logic of that argument has to be twisted on its head. And so they say, wait a second, it's not the Arab governments. The Arab governments get it, but what about the Arab peoples? Arab governments can't work in close coordination with Israel because their people are all opposed to it. You have to give them something to convince their people that it's okay to work with Israel. Well, that would also be a very good argument if the Arab states were doing everything they could to end incitement against Israel. If they were doing everything they could to stop pouring fuel on that fire, then they could come with clean hands to the United States and to the Europeans and say, we're doing everything we can to lower the flame. Will you help us? But thus far, they haven't done it. So let me just conclude by saying that if you look at this conflict with a sober, prudent, through a sober and prudent lens, you will see that you have a historic opportunity here. And what we need is a leadership who can recognize this opportunity, where we can neutralize the dangers and seize this possibility of peace that we have not had before and may not come again. I think, this year I'll disagree with Aaron, I think now is the time for bold leadership, and I think that Netanyahu is the right man in the right place at the right time. Thank you.